Cunnel threw $500 in his wife's face, laughed, and told her a smelly barbecue cook was no longer good enough for a man of his standing. Then he served her divorce papers on the spot, walking out to start a new life with his wealthy mistress. 6 months later, Cunnel strutted into the nation's most elite gala to show off his new fiancée, only to watch the country's richest billionaire step onto the stage and introduce his new bride. It was the same barbecue cook he threw away. And Cunnel was about to learn that her new husband just bought his entire company and gave her total control over his job. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments section before the story start, and don't forget to subscribe, like and turn on notification button because there is more ahead. Cunnel threw $500 in his wife's face, laughed, and told her a smelly barbecue cook was no longer good enough for a man of his standing. The money scattered across the polished marble floor. Amara didn't move. She simply stared at the bills around her bare feet while the smell of smoked chicken and peppers still clung to the sleeves of the black catering uniform she had worn home that evening. Cunnel adjusted the expensive watch on his wrist. For 11 years, Amara had stood beside that man. She had cooked for his friends, supported his dreams, paid bills when his business was barely surviving, and spent countless nights preparing barbecue orders until her hands were sore. But now, Cunnel looked at her as though she were something he had outgrown. "I built a company," he said coldly. "I attend meetings with executives. I sit at tables with people who matter." Amara slowly raised her eyes. "And?" Cunnel scoffed. "And I can't keep coming home to this." He gestured toward her uniform. "This smell. This little barbecue business. This embarrassing life." Amara swallowed. "Cunnel, you knew exactly who I was when you married me." "I did." His voice became even colder. "And I was foolish." Those 3 words hurt more than the money. Amara looked toward the dining table where dinner sat untouched. She had spent 2 hours preparing it because Cunnel had told her he would be home early. She had even bought his favorite wine. Now he wouldn't even look at it. Then Cunnel reached into a leather folder. Amara's stomach tightened. "What is that?" He placed several papers on the table. Divorce papers. For several seconds the room became completely silent. Amara stared at the documents. Then she looked at him. "You're divorcing me?" "I already made my decision." "Because of the barbecue business?" "No." Cunnel smiled bitterly. "Because of the woman I've become successful enough to deserve." Amara's face went still. She knew immediately. "Vanessa?" Cunnel didn't deny it. "She understands my world." Amara laughed once, but there was no happiness in it. "Your world?" "Yes." "And what world did I live in for the last 11 years? Cunnel turned toward the door. "The past." He picked up his expensive briefcase. Then he stopped. Without turning around he said, "Sign the papers. I'll have someone collect your things tomorrow." Amara stared at his back. "Cunnel." He finally looked over his shoulder. She expected regret. There was none. "Did you ever love me?" For the first time his expression changed. But whatever emotion appeared vanished almost instantly. "I loved who you were." He opened the door. "Unfortunately, that woman isn't useful to me anymore." Then he walked away. Amara remained standing in the middle of the house they had built together. She looked down at the $500 scattered across the floor. Then she did something Cunnel never expected. She didn't chase him. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She bent down and picked up every single bill. Not because she wanted his money. Because she refused to leave anything behind for the man who had just destroyed her dignity. The next morning Amara signed the divorce papers. Cunnel barely glanced at her as she handed them over. Vanessa was waiting in his car. She wore designer sunglasses and smiled when Amara walked outside. Amara saw everything. The expensive car. The diamond bracelet. The confident smile. And suddenly she understood. Cunnel hadn't simply left her. He believed he had traded her for something better. She wished him well. Then she walked away. For the first time in 11 years, Amara was completely alone. But what Cunnel didn't know was that losing him was about to become the beginning of a life he could never have imagined. 3 weeks later, Amara stood behind a grill at a private charity dinner. It was supposed to be a small catering job. Instead, it became the most important night of her life. The event was being held at a secluded estate outside the city. Powerful executives, politicians, celebrities, and billionaires had gathered for a private fundraiser. Amara didn't care who they were. She was there to work. Halfway through the evening, disaster struck. One of the main chefs collapsed. Guests began complaining. The kitchen staff panicked. The event organizer rushed toward Amara. "Can you handle the main course?" Amara looked toward the enormous dining hall. Hundreds of guests were waiting. She glanced at the chaotic kitchen. Then she rolled up her sleeves. I can. For the next 2 hours she worked without stopping. She reorganized the kitchen. She rescued the food. She personally supervised every plate. And by midnight, the same guests who had been complaining were asking who had prepared the meal. Amara didn't know that someone had been watching her the entire time. A tall man stood alone on the balcony overlooking the kitchen. His name was Daniel Sterling. He was rarely seen at public events. He owned businesses across several industries. His fortune was so enormous that newspapers frequently described him as the richest man in the country. But tonight, Daniel wasn't impressed by Amara's cooking. He was impressed by the way she treated people. At one point, a young kitchen assistant accidentally dropped an entire tray. The boy froze in terror. The event manager shouted at him. Amara immediately stepped between them. Don't fire him. He ruined 20 plates. He made a mistake. He needs to learn. He will. Amara looked at the frightened assistant. But he won't learn anything if you humiliate him. Daniel watched silently. Then he smiled. The next morning, Amara received a phone call. Mrs. Amara? Yes. My employer would like to hire you for several private events. Who is your employer? There was a brief pause. Mr. Daniel Sterling. Amara nearly dropped the phone. She had heard the name. Everyone had. I don't think I can afford to work for someone like him. The voice on the other end chuckled. Mrs. Amara, I don't think you understand. What? He isn't asking how much you charge. Amara frowned. What is he asking? He wants to know what it would take for you to build something bigger. That question stayed with Amara all day. Because for the first time, someone wasn't asking her to cook for them. Someone was asking what she wanted. Meanwhile, across town, Cunnel was celebrating his engagement to Vanessa. He had no idea that Amara's life was changing. And he certainly had no idea that the mysterious billionaire who had just taken an interest in his former wife's future was already studying something far more important than her recipes. Daniel Sterling had quietly ordered a complete review of Cunnel's company. And when the first report landed on his desk, his expression changed. There was something wrong. Something Cunnel had hidden from everyone. Daniel picked up his phone. Find out everything, he said. A voice asked, everything about Cunnel? Daniel looked through the glass window at Amara, who was working in the kitchen downstairs. No. His voice became serious. Everything about the man who betrayed her. And that was when Daniel discovered the first secret that could change all their lives. But what exactly had Cunnel done, and why had the richest man in the country suddenly decided to investigate him? 3 days after Daniel Sterling ordered the investigation, Amara still had no idea what was happening behind the scenes. To her, Daniel was simply a wealthy client who had unexpectedly given her an opportunity. He had arranged for her to cater another private dinner at one of his properties, but this time there was something different. He wanted to meet her. Amara arrived wearing a simple navy blue dress. She expected a formal business meeting. Instead, Daniel was sitting alone at the end of a long dining table, without assistants, bodyguards, or the intimidating entourage she had expected. Please sit, he said. Amara hesitated. Are you sure? Daniel smiled. I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't. She sat. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Daniel placed a folder on the table. I want to invest in your business. Amara stared at him. My barbecue business? Yes. She almost laughed. Why? Because you have something most businesses spend millions trying to manufacture. What? People trust you. Amara looked down. She wasn't used to hearing compliments like that. I just cook. Daniel shook his head. No. You make people feel cared for. Those words touched something inside her. Cunnel had spent years convincing her that her work was insignificant. Daniel seemed to see the exact opposite. But Amara wasn't ready to trust him completely. Why me? Daniel leaned back. Because I watched what you did that night. The charity dinner? Yes. I was just doing my job. You protected someone who had made a mistake even though you had nothing to gain from it. Amara smiled faintly. That's what decent people do. Daniel's expression softened. Exactly. The conversation continued for almost 2 hours. Daniel asked about her business, her suppliers, her customers, her dreams. Amara realized something unusual. He wasn't asking questions to impress her. He genuinely wanted to know. When she finally left that evening, Daniel offered to drive her home. She politely declined. I've learned something. What? That I should never let another man's money determine where I go. Daniel smiled. I think you're going to be difficult to impress. Amara smiled back. That's probably a good thing. Neither of them knew that someone was watching them from across the street. Cunnel. He had come to the restaurant to meet a client. Instead, he had seen Amara walking out of Daniel's property. At first, he didn't recognize her. She looked different. Not richer. Not dramatically transformed. Just confident. Then he saw Daniel. Cunnel's stomach tightened. He knew that face. Everyone in business knew it. Daniel Sterling. The richest man in the country. Cunnel watched as Daniel opened the car door for Amara. His jaw tightened. What is she doing with him? Vanessa stepped beside him. What? Cunnel quickly looked away. Nothing. But Vanessa had already seen Amara. Her expression changed. Is that your ex-wife? Cunnel said nothing. Vanessa laughed. She actually found herself another man? Cunnel forced a smile. She always wanted attention. But his eyes remained fixed on Daniel's car. Something about the scene bothered him. More than it should have. The next morning, Cunnel received another problem. His company's largest investor had frozen a major payment. Then another partner demanded an emergency meeting. Then his finance director called. Sir, we have a serious cash flow issue. Cunnel slammed his pen onto the desk. How serious? Pause. Serious enough that we may have to delay payroll. Cunnel stared through the window. That wasn't supposed to happen. His company had been growing. He had just bought a new house for Vanessa. He had paid for an expensive engagement celebration. He had taken loans against future contracts. Everything had been based on one assumption. That the next 6 months would be better than the previous 6. But suddenly, everything was moving in the opposite direction. Find out what's happening, he ordered. His finance director lowered his voice. We already did. And? There are irregular transactions. Cunnel's face hardened. What kind? Payments made through companies that don't appear to have legitimate business purposes. Cunnel stood. Are you accusing someone of stealing? No, sir. Then what are you saying? I'm saying someone may have been moving money without your knowledge. Cunnel's heart began pounding. Who? The finance director hesitated. We're still investigating. Across town, Amara's barbecue business was experiencing an entirely different kind of transformation. Daniel had hired consultants to help her expand. But Amara refused to simply accept money. She wanted to understand every part of the business. Within weeks, she had created a new catering structure, improved supplier contracts, trained staff, and developed a premium private event menu. Daniel watched from a distance. He was impressed. But something else was happening. He was falling for her. Slowly. Quietly. Without either of them admitting it. One evening, after a long meeting, Daniel found Amara sitting alone outside. You look tired. I am. Then go home. She smiled. You're the billionaire. You're supposed to tell me to work harder. Daniel sat beside her. I don't need another employee. Amara looked at him. What do you need? Daniel looked into her eyes. Someone who reminds me that life isn't only about winning. Amara became quiet. There was something in his voice. Something vulnerable. She looked away. I don't know if I'm ready for another relationship. I didn't ask you for one. But you're thinking about it? Daniel smiled. Maybe. For the first time since her divorce, Amara felt her heart beat differently. Then her phone rang. It was her lawyer. Amara, you need to come to my office tomorrow morning. Why? I found something in the divorce documents. Her smile disappeared. What? Something Cunnel didn't disclose. What are you talking about? I can't explain it over the phone. Amara sat upright. Tell me. The lawyer lowered his voice. Before Cunnel divorced you, he transferred ownership of several assets. To whom? That's the problem. Amara's stomach tightened. Who owns them now? I don't know yet. She ended the call. Daniel immediately noticed the change in her expression. What happened? Amara looked at him. I think my ex-husband lied to me. Daniel's face became serious. How? I don't know. Daniel stood. Then we'll find out. But Amara shook her head. No. Why? Because this is my problem. Daniel studied her. Then he nodded. Okay. He didn't argue. But later that night, Daniel made one phone call. Did you find anything? His investigator answered. Yes. Daniel's expression hardened. What? Cunnel didn't just hide money. There was a pause. He transferred ownership of a major subsidiary weeks before the divorce. Daniel's eyes narrowed. To whom? The investigator hesitated. That is where it gets strange. Tell me. The company was transferred to a private holding structure. Who owns the holding structure? We traced the paperwork. And? The investigator took a breath. It connects directly to Vanessa's family. Daniel slowly lowered the phone. Now everything made sense. Cunnel hadn't simply abandoned Amara for another woman. He had been preparing something long before he served those divorce papers. But there was one detail Daniel hadn't expected. The documents showed that Amara had unknowingly signed something years earlier. A clause buried inside an old business agreement. A clause that could give her rights to the very assets Cunnel had tried to hide. Daniel looked at the documents again. Then he whispered. He didn't divorce her because she wasn't valuable. His eyes hardened. He divorced her because he thought she didn't know how valuable she was. The following morning, Amara walked into her lawyer's office. She had no idea that the documents waiting on the desk could completely change her understanding of her marriage. And she had no idea that Cunnel was about to discover that the woman he threw away might legally own the one thing he needed most. But when Amara turned the first page, she saw a signature that made her blood run cold. It was hers. And she had no memory of signing it. Amara stared at the signature at the bottom of the document. Her name, her handwriting, her signature. But she had no memory of ever seeing the agreement. What is this? She whispered. Her lawyer, Mr. Adeyemi, pushed his glasses higher on his nose. It is an amendment to the original partnership agreement for your catering business. Amara frowned. I never signed an amendment. You signed something 6 years ago. What did I sign? Her lawyer turned the document toward her. Cunnel told you it was a standard authorization allowing him to handle certain administrative matters for the business. Amara's heart sank. What did it actually do? Mr. Adeyemi pointed to a paragraph. It gave you a 20% beneficial interest in several companies connected to the business. Amara stared at him. I don't understand. You were never merely Cunnel's wife in the business structure, Amara. You were an undisclosed beneficiary. She slowly leaned back. Why would he do that? That's what we need to find out. Amara suddenly remembered the night she had signed the papers. Cunnel had told her not to worry about the details. He had kissed her forehead and said, it's just paperwork. She had trusted him. That trust now felt like a knife. Her lawyer continued. There's more. Amara looked up. More? Those shares were transferred shortly before your divorce. To whom? Mr. Adeyemi slid another document across the desk. Amara read the name. Sterling Holdings. She froze. Sterling? Yes. Her heart began racing. Daniel? Her lawyer nodded. Daniel Sterling acquired the holding company 2 weeks ago. Amara stood. No. Amara? No. That's impossible. She grabbed her bag. I need to speak to him. Daniel was in his office when Amara arrived. She walked through the doors without waiting for an appointment. Daniel immediately stood. Amara? Did you buy Cunnel's company? Daniel's expression changed. For a moment he said nothing. Then he answered honestly. Yes. Amara stared at him. When? 2 weeks ago. And you knew about my shares? Daniel didn't answer immediately. That was enough. You knew. Yes. Amara's eyes filled with disappointment. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to make sure you were protected before I involved you. Protected from what? Cunnel. She shook her head. You had no right to make decisions about my life without telling me. Daniel walked around the desk. I wasn't trying to control your life. Then what were you trying to do? Give you back what he took from you. Amara's voice trembled. You don't understand. Then help me understand. She looked at him. I spent 11 years believing that man loved me. Daniel remained silent. I trusted him with everything. My money, my business, my future. Her voice cracked. And now I find out that the man who claims to love me has been secretly protecting me from another man who claims he doesn't care? Daniel stepped closer. I care about you. Amara looked away. That scares me. Why? Because I don't know if I'm ready to trust anyone again. Daniel nodded. Then don't. She looked at him. Don't? Not yet. He took a step back. You don't owe me trust because I helped you. Amara's eyes softened. And what do you want? Daniel looked directly at her. You. She froze. Not your business. Not your money. Not your shares. His voice became quieter. You. Amara couldn't speak. Then Daniel added something she wasn't expecting. But I won't ask you to choose me until you know you can choose yourself first. That was the moment something inside Amara broke open. Not from pain. From relief. For the first time, a man wasn't asking her to become smaller so he could feel bigger. Meanwhile, Cunnel's world was collapsing. His finance director placed another report on his desk. Sir, 3 major accounts have been frozen. Cunnel slammed his hand down. Why? The new owners are reviewing the company's financial structure. New owners. Cunnel stared at him. What new owners? The director swallowed. Sterling Holdings. Cunnel went pale. Daniel Sterling? Yes. Cunnel stood so quickly his chair rolled backward. When did this happen? 2 weeks ago. Why wasn't I told? You were. Cunnel stared at him. What? The acquisition notice was sent to your office. Cunnel remembered. There had been dozens of emails. He had ignored most of them. He had been too busy preparing for his engagement celebration with Vanessa. He grabbed his phone. Get me Daniel Sterling. I don't think he'll take your call. Get me his office. The director left. Cunnel sank into his chair. Then his phone rang. Vanessa. He answered. Where are you? At the office. We have a problem. What now? My father wants me to postpone the wedding. Cunnel closed his eyes. Why? He says your financial situation is unstable. I'll fix it. You've been saying that for weeks. Vanessa? She interrupted him. And there's another problem. What? My father heard that Daniel Sterling bought your company. Cunnel's jaw tightened. So? Vanessa went silent. Then she said. Daniel Sterling doesn't buy companies randomly. The call ended. Cunnel stared at the phone. For the first time he began to wonder whether his divorce from Amara had been the biggest mistake of his life. But it was already too late. 3 weeks later, the country prepared for the most prestigious gala of the year. The event was invitation only. Presidents, billionaires, celebrities, business leaders, and members of powerful families were expected to attend. Cunnel had spent an enormous amount of money preparing for the evening. He needed everyone to see that he was still successful. Vanessa arrived beside him wearing an expensive diamond necklace. Cunnel smiled for the cameras. Tonight, he whispered, everything changes. Vanessa smiled. But she didn't look convinced. Across town, Amara stood in front of a mirror. She wore a simple but elegant black evening gown. Daniel walked into the room. For a moment he couldn't speak. You look beautiful. Amara smiled. Thank you. Daniel offered his hand. Ready? She looked at herself one last time. 6 months earlier, she had been standing in her kitchen while her husband threw money in her face. Tonight, she was walking into the most powerful room in the country beside the man who had shown her what respect felt like. She took Daniel's hand. Ready? The gala was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the ballroom. Thousands of lights reflected across polished marble. Every important person in the country seemed to be there. Cunnel walked through the room with Vanessa. He felt powerful again. Then the lights dimmed. A host stepped onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have the honor of welcoming the man who has transformed industries across the world. The crowd erupted. Cunnel turned toward the stage. Daniel Sterling walked out. Applause thundered through the ballroom. Cunnel's smile disappeared. Daniel reached the microphone. Thank you. Then he turned toward the entrance. And tonight I'd like to introduce someone very special. The crowd turned. Amara stepped into the ballroom. Cunnel stopped breathing. The glass in his hand slipped. It shattered across the floor. Vanessa stared. No. Amara walked beside Daniel. Not behind him. Beside him. Daniel took her hand. Then he looked at the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my wife. The ballroom erupted. Cunnel stared at Amara as if he were seeing a ghost. His former wife. The woman he had called a smelly barbecue cook. The woman he had thrown $500 at. The woman he had abandoned for Vanessa. Now standing beside the richest man in the country. But Daniel wasn't finished. He turned toward Cunnel. And there's one more announcement. The room became silent. Daniel smiled. Tonight, Sterling Holdings officially assumes full ownership of Cunnel's company. Cunnel's face went white. Then Daniel delivered the final blow. And effective immediately, the company will be placed under the complete control of my wife, Amara. Gasps erupted around the room. Cunnel couldn't move. Amara looked directly at him. For the first time she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Fear. But then Daniel leaned toward her and whispered something. Her expression suddenly changed. Because Daniel had just revealed one final secret. The company hadn't been purchased merely to punish Cunnel. It had been purchased because there was evidence of something far more serious hidden inside it. Something that could send Cunnel to prison. And the evidence was connected to Vanessa's family. Amara slowly turned toward Daniel. Are you telling me they planned this from the beginning? Daniel's face hardened. Yes. Then he looked across the ballroom at Cunnel. And now they know we found out. But before Amara could ask what the plan was, the ballroom doors suddenly burst open, and a team of investigators walked inside carrying an arrest warrant. The ballroom fell silent as the investigators walked toward Cunnel. He looked at Vanessa, then at her father, then finally at Amara. This is a mistake, Cunnel said. One of the investigators held up a document. It isn't. Cunnel's face went pale. You're accusing me of something? Financial fraud, unlawful transfers, and falsification of company records. Vanessa immediately stepped away from him. Cunnel, I had nothing to do with this. He stared at her in disbelief. You knew. I knew nothing. Her father quickly tried to leave, but another investigator stopped him. The truth came out quickly. Months before the divorce, Cunnel had secretly transferred company funds into accounts controlled by Vanessa's family. He planned to blame the financial losses on Amara's catering business after their divorce. But he made one mistake. He had underestimated the woman whose signature he had used. The agreement Amara unknowingly signed years earlier gave her legal ownership rights that Cunnel couldn't erase. When Daniel acquired the company, his investigators discovered the hidden transfers. Cunnel had thought he was abandoning a woman who had nothing. Instead, he had unknowingly handed control of his future to her. As the investigators led him away, Cunnel stopped beside Amara. His voice broke. Amara. She looked at him calmly. I was wrong. She said nothing. I thought money made me better than you. Still nothing. I thought you were holding me back. Amara finally looked him in the eyes. You were never held back by me, Cunnel. He lowered his head. You were held back by who you chose to become. Cunnel's eyes filled with tears. Can you forgive me? Amara paused. Yes. He looked up hopefully. But forgiveness doesn't mean I want you back. His face fell. I don't. Then she walked away. Daniel was waiting for her. He didn't say anything. He simply offered his hand. Amara took it. Months later, Amara transformed the company. She renamed one of its divisions after her original barbecue business and created opportunities for hard-working people who had been overlooked by society. Her success wasn't built on revenge. It was built on purpose. Daniel remained beside her, not as the billionaire who had rescued her, but as the man who respected her enough to let her rescue herself. One evening, Amara stood on the balcony of their home overlooking the city. Daniel walked up behind her. Are you happy? She smiled. For the first time, I know what happiness feels like. He wrapped his arms around her. And what does it feel like? Amara looked at the city lights. Knowing that I never needed Cunnel's approval to become valuable. Daniel kissed her forehead. You were valuable before I ever met you. She smiled. And somewhere far away, Cunnel sat alone, finally understanding the cruelest lesson of his life. He hadn't lost Amara when Daniel married her. He had lost her the day he decided her worth depended on what she could do for him. Amara had once been the woman standing barefoot beside a grill while her husband threw $500 in her face. Now she was a powerful businesswoman, a beloved wife, and the person controlling the company he had once believed made him important. But her greatest victory wasn't becoming richer than Cunnel. It was becoming free from the need to prove anything to him. And that was the day Amara finally understood. Sometimes losing the person who refuses to value you is not the end of your story, it is the beginning of discovering your true worth. Thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe, like and turn on notification button to help us grow. The end.